Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Madison Realty Capital, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, AmTrust Title, Ariel Property Advisors, Dime Community Bank. Additional funding has been provided by AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Real Estate Organization, Handro Properties, Hodges Ward Elliott, Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Meringoff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Organization, Moynihan Capital Partners, and these friends.
Oh, little crystal ball, what does the investment sales world look like in the summer of 2018? Are you shiny or are you dull? I don't know for sure. So I've assembled these 4 leading investment sales executives to provide their insight on the market of investment sales in the region. My guests include Brian Leary, who's the co-founder and managing partner at CPEX Real Estate, Andrew Sassoon, who's the managing director at Eastern Consolidated, my buddy, the legendary David Scheckman, senior managing director at Meridian Investment Sales, and last but not least, Tom Donovan, vice chairman for Queens at Cushman & Wakefield.
Hey, Michael.
So since I've put you over here, how is business really today?
Business first half of 2018 has been fantastic. Buyers and sellers have both been a little bit more realistic. There's been some momentum in the market. I think we all could agree that 2017 was not nearly enough stuff traded. The volume was down. Dollar prices might have been up, but the volume was down of sales. 2018, I think people are coming back to reality a little bit. Prices have come down a little bit. Buyers have kind of leveled off, and I think people are coming to meeting of the minds.
And you?
Q2 is much better than Q1 of 2018. I think business is robust, but I will tell you, everything is much harder. There's much more challenges. I think banks are underwriting a lot tougher, and fervor all but dried up a few months ago. What's exciting is some of the seller capitulation and bridging the gap between buyer and seller. It's definitely robust business, but it's a heavier weight to bear to do every deal.
Andrew?
I mean, it's been very busy. I mean, 2018 has picked up a lot over 2017. The sites that we're working on right now, the interest level that we've had, I mean, between the past 2 to 4 months has been tremendous. I mean, but the values are probably the bigger issue of everything. It's a matter of really perspective of what you think is a healthy market versus a not healthy market. But right now, the activity
Are sellers becoming more realistic of that their thoughts that they had were unacceptable, that they wouldn't be capable of reaching?
I would say for the most part, yes.
Real sellers.
I would say right now we're seeing that. I think that's the after effect. Right now, what we're seeing in this year is that year of a lull, basically, or 6 months of a lull, where that activity wasn't there, or at least even the the nonsense offers that sometimes sellers see, they weren't coming in as much. So then they started to understand, oh, maybe there's a softening or there's something that's going on outside of this, and it's brought a lot of people to reality. And that leads to a healthy market, ultimately. I think that
Right.
right now we're seeing a pretty good.
So I think we are getting back to a little bit of reality realty, for sure. I think there's obviously a low velocity of trades in the market. There's a lack of inventory. There's always more money than deals on the sidelines, but I think the banks and some of the private equity shops have been pulling back a little bit on their lending, and it's kind of creating an efficient market in terms of where owners' perspectives are.
You know, a good portion of the investment sales in the region and around the nation are due to 1031 exchanges, which the tax law still allows for real estate, not for art and other things. Would you say that that continues in 2018, that 1031 is having a major continuation of the sales?
Absolutely. I think 1031s are a key component to investment sales in the tri-state region and candidly nationally. To the extent that they're challenged or pulled back, you will see a dollar for dollar recalibration, and perhaps the reverberations could be greater than dollar for dollar. They are a big part of the fuel to the investment sales market.
Brian, you and Tommy spend more time in the boroughs, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This is a simple question which Andrew and David could fill in later on. I don't believe that retail is in such dire straits in the boroughs. How are you seeing retail sales for retail properties in the boroughs?
A couple of things. One, well-located retail properties, mouth of a subway, bus stop, main intersection, main on main, always desirable, kind of flagship locations, and good neighborhood retail. People will always need a place to buy a quart of milk, get their nails done, get their hair done. What buyers are doing now and sellers are realizing is where people would have a vacancy and you put a market projection and they take that as good. Now it's based on really what's in place NOI. I think we all could agree on that. Absolutely. People aren't saying, hey, that tenant might not come in the next 6 months, so we're valuing it on what's there today.
Are people buying properties with the expectation that they're going to be able to rent it at a higher number, or are they saying, many buyers saying, I'd rather have the property with the tenant in place for the retail?
Well, I mean, we worked on something in Park Slope that I worked on probably 2 or 3 years ago, and the value of the building was driven by the retail initially. The owner unfortunately passed away. It went into an estate. We didn't end up selling 2 years ago, but last year we ended up selling it. Retail was still vacant, but no one was really bullish on retail. The value dropped by 40% on that building in itself. So, I mean, the guys who bought it believe that they're going to be able to lease up that retail. They feel that they're going to be able to achieve healthy numbers, but again, healthy is more of a perspective angle. They think they're going to be able to get a solid tenant in there and probably, within the next 2 or 3 months. We closed back in December. But I mean, we had the same situation also on Greenpoint Avenue, where there was another property where similar situation. 2 years ago, we were working on it. Unfortunately, there was death in the family. And then flash forward 2 years later, the numbers that we were projecting off of rents, they weren't holding water. And they dropped. I mean, that wasn't as pronounced. It wasn't 40%, but it dropped about 15, 20% based off of where it was.
So another aspect of that I think most brokers value is the potential of the owner-user on a vacant space, and I think that's somewhat out the window. I think it's very hard to run a business in New York City in every sector. Just like buying real estate, hard to get financing, and I think that premium is out of the market. And basically every evaluation you see has a 10 or 15% user premium on it. So you're kind of starting behind the 8 ball on that. But I do think, as far as vacancy, there's always entrepreneurs and redevelopers that are going to see opportunity in that, and they'd rather reposition it themselves. I think on a cap rate basis, cap rates are almost national, particularly when you're looking at good credit.
What about vacant Sears, vacant Kmart's? What are you seeing over there? Because there's been a lot of adjustments. They recently approved in Paramus the conversion of the former Sears store to an 80,000 square foot Stu Leonard. And the second floor, they're going to put a movie theater in. So you're seeing the grocers coming back and you're seeing the movie theaters, even though there's Netflix and everything else. What are you seeing with regard to the grocery business and the entertainment business?
We just sold a site on Queens Boulevard that on the retail, every movie company came in looking to lease. And they had very specific height and size requirements. But I know on 39th Street and Queens Boulevard, they're putting a new movie theater.
Right
I believe in
across
Brooklyn, they
from
just did a new one downtown Manhattan. In the Seaport, they're putting a beautiful,
Yeah, that opened.
that open already. So that movie theater business is coming back, especially with the luxury seating and such. So the old theaters are kind of getting phased out. I haven't seen the big supermarkets getting cut up yet. I know this was a Sports Authority on Northern Boulevard, I believe. They were looking at car dealerships for that and stuff. But I don't know, have you guys seen anything?
Well, we're seeing excitement in the sense that we have new tenants who we candidly didn't expect to be coming in and taking a look, and a lot of them want to be owners. In Queens, for instance, the movie industry is tremendous in driving it. The whole experiential retail, it's starting to backfill some of these larger cavernous
I mean,
spaces.
Dave & Buster's is signing a number of leases. You know, the entertainment over there. There is a change in the retail environment. How are we seeing, you know, we were talking about industrial. There was that everybody wanted the industrial property, and then they all wanted to convert them to office.
I think they're changing that. I think that approach has also changed and it's adapted to stay into a type of industrial use. I think we're seeing people around JFK who've purchased, they're trying to adapt that to even multi-level industrial
Yeah,
use.
I mean, the Triangle Equities deal near JFK, you know, they're building a 3-story warehouse, which is a need right near, you know, point-to-point distribution. I think industrial is fine. I think the question is certain people who are buying industrial are expecting rents which certain industrial tenants can't afford.
That's true. You know, this is, everybody talks about this unicorn, this golden chalice. I'm going to have an industrial building. It's going to be simple cinder blocks with 18 to 20-foot ceilings, and last mile distribution is going to come in. I'm going to mark to market $10 a foot rents, and I'm going to go to $20 a foot. That's just hogwash. But what is happening let's talk about industrial in the sense of simple cinder block buildings with roll-up doors, and maybe it's 30, 40, 50,000 square feet and larger. Give me 10 of those to 2 retail condominiums in Manhattan today, other than obvious certain exceptions that are, you know, if there's something that's well priced, it will fly off the shelf in Manhattan. What we are finding in the boroughs with industrial is there are people who are neophytes with industrial and people from out of town who are coming in, and they're not just banking on Prologis, they're not just banking on Amazon, they're coming in because the industrial rents have been so low for so long. There are deals that from inception, in Queens in particular, Tommy's backyard, there are deals that from inception you can buy, you can work over the course of 2 or 3 years and have very stable cash flowing deals. There is more demand than there is supply for quality industrial in the boroughs.
Brian, what about Red Hook and the Gowanus?
So just to piggyback David real quick, the fragmentation of that earlier movement of converting to office space of those traditional industrial users, not the Prologis or the Amazons, but the everyday woodworkers and local type of tenants. They got so many of them got fragmented that there's a major play in the, call it $12 to $20 a foot range. And there's been a lot of movement in that sector. But back to Red Hook, I just finished a ground lease there with a family that owns the asset for 50 years. They were staging construction materials on there. Large public works company, and we signed a lease at $10 a foot for ground up development for a ground lease. And you know, that type of location that's surrounded by 5 high demographic brownstone neighborhoods is really ripe for that last mile of logistics.
Now, Andrew, you were involved with the Bolivar sale, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was a great deal. I think just what David said, right now, I think that that's been the hottest asset class that we've received demand for from the buyers. I think with everything that's been going on, also converting these types of, you know, industrial buildings into office or other types of uses, it's shrunk the available space. So right now, naturally, there's a level demand, if not increased demand, out of tenants who want to take these spaces over, similar to what we had with Bolivar. We had Bolivar, 5 years ago in the office? Nobody really understood the play there. And, to the credit of the guys who came in from across the country who understood that play, I mean, they caught it at the right time because, who knows what they could sell it for now.
It's an important point. Industrial in New York, let's talk about the 5 boroughs. Industrial historically for the past 20 or 30 years has really, even the larger, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 square foot warehouses, has been owner occupied and owner driven. The concept of REITs or speculators or generational families owning it as an investment class is fairly novel to New York. It wasn't many years ago. And one last point. There's an incredible phenomenon in the boroughs in industrial and light industrial. You have tenants with large spaces, and they may not need it. I know of one building, for instance, in Maspeth, where there were 4 tenants over 150,000 square feet. 2 of the 4 tenants, and they're paying anywhere from $9 to $12 a foot, which was the prevailing rent 2 years ago. 2 of the 4 tenants have permission from the owner to sublet their spaces. They've actually left the space. They are subletting from 18 to 22 a foot, and they're splitting the overage with the owner. That's how much of a demand there is for industrial in the boroughs.
The New York Times did that expose on multifamily, which did not help. The banks were very upset about it, to be honest. I deal with the banks all the time. How has that had an effect, that article, coupled with certain the cases that take place and the other potential, of changing apartments from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom? How has it had an effect on the sales of multifamily?
It's very, very prominent. Everybody's checking the DHCRs with a fine-tooth comb. Want to make sure if there's any open litigation, have any of the not-for-profits come in and check the building. And tenants in the building are getting called all the time. Is your landlord harassing you? Have you been subject to X, Y, and Z? You have to be an educated investor to really understand it today.
We unfortunately, they're having a direct effect. And we have additional legislation and additional witch hunt type environment sentiment coming directly from our legislators, which is now having a dollar-for-dollar effect on the market.
How do you see the change when the Affordable New York came out? It helped the sale of land, okay? How is that today having an effect on the sale of development sites?
I think it took some time for everybody to digest the programs, but I think, it's an area of my expertise, and the development sector has been pretty hot, especially with the affordable housing. Yeah, we did another ground lease in Jamaica about 18 months ago for 500,000 feet. Almost everything that's being built today has some component of affordable housing in it. And I think the developers that have embraced it and understand the programs that best apply to their situation are active in the market.
Everybody says the Bronx is booming. It's a great place, okay? I believe there are certain pockets of the Bronx which are fine. As you read recently on the Triangle, it wasn't that, South Bronx and everything. How do you see the Bronx?
It's neighborhood by neighborhood. Give me a warehouse in Hunts Point today, and I will give you a line out the door, any of the folks in this room. Give us a warehouse with vacancy.
What about multifamily? Everybody thought the Bronx...
Multifamily is white hot. The Bronx has, the Bronx has been booming for years, though. The media, there's a little bit of lag.
It's still on sale compared to the other 3
That's
boroughs.
right. You can buy properties in the Bronx that have actual value and underwrite from inception. The greatest thing about the Bronx is you can buy properties without the need for turnover in units. There is a natural appreciation in all of the asset classes in the Bronx, so you can buy and hold, and it doesn't have to be for a prolonged period, and really enjoy what's happening in the Bronx. To our mayor's credit, a lot of his programs, including Universal Pre-K, you can really see how they've taken positive effect in the Bronx. And they're helping. The Bronx has always been a bedroom community, much like Queens. And now with the added upward movement in development and scale, it's really becoming a place to park
What about
money.
the office market in Brooklyn, Queens, and
It's fragmented.
Manhattan?
So I'm marketing a 500,000 square foot office site in Williamsburg right now. We've seen some movement in what we thought people would underwrite, buyers who were coming into this would underwrite for rents. It's a waterfront site in Williamsburg. It's on Kent, Wythe, North 9th, North 10th Street. And initially we thought that rents were going to be pushing into the 70s per square foot. Saying that now, I think people would think I'm a little crazy for saying something
Yes,
like that.
that would be
Of course.
certifiably insane.
It is certifiably insane. However, with the success, at least of what we're hearing a couple blocks north at 25 Kent, I know that you've had a couple of the people who are involved in that project in panels throughout a lot of time on the Slow Report, but we're hearing that they're getting a lot of good action there, positive action, as though big leases that
I
are
mean,
coming
you know,
into
if
play.
you take the Navy Yard, you have the new building, 670,000 square feet, Boston Properties, WeWork, and Rudin. With the exception of WeWork, there are no leases signed. The Brooklyn Navy Yard has a 1 million square foot new building where you can go in at $30 a foot or $35 a foot. You don't have great transportation to the Navy Yard, but you have to be realistic of what the rents are, because even in Manhattan, I did a podcast this morning with Ken Fisher, and he was saying, look, I'm giving away $150 concession. I'm doing these deals at different numbers, so it changes the perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the other pieces of it too, though, when we're going up against sites, or when that comes up, when people talk about the Navy Yards or they talk about other locations, this location has a neighborhood that's already there. That's one of the biggest selling points about it. When I sold 41 Flatbush a couple of years ago, the neighborhood was already there around it. I think when Quinlan and BLT went in there to reposition that office building into an office play, they saw there was a demand there. Because, I mean, when we first looked at it, I thought it was going to be a residential play.
Brian was in Brooklyn at 10 years before.
There you go.
Okay, and I was in there many years before when I knew 41 Flatbush, okay?
So there you go.
So the world, but it changed. The environment changed because what happened in downtown Brooklyn.
Exactly.
Okay, in Lower Manhattan.
That's a
Exactly.
central business district, though.
Exactly.
Just like Lower Manhattan, Midtown. I think what's interesting about the office market is how in some neighborhoods the economy is local. For example, like Bay Ridge, there's very little office stock there, and the rents are in the 40s.
But on the second floor of 25-foot walk-ups, where sometimes it's the same owner and they'll break through, and you have high-end offices, you'd be surprised. I think a lot of Michael's viewers would be very surprised if they were buzzed into some of those offices in Bay Ridge on 6th Avenue. Who's doing what? You have great offices out there.
Yeah, so they're getting much higher numbers than Sunset Park, for example.
Right.
You know, the medical clients, I mean, NYU just signed a lease for 150,000 square feet on 3rd Avenue. NYU has a 300,000 square foot new building on 41st Street. New York Pres has a 400,000 square foot building. Do you seeing a lot of medical in your market today?
So, you know, downstate, that consortium of hospitals in East Flatbush there is about 5 million feet of space. It's very active, and downstate is kind of leading the pack. They're actually actively bidding on stuff that we're selling in the area, even right down to, we got a bid from them the other day on a 20,000-foot site. So they're kind of looking to buy up anything within the parameters of their campus.
Michael, I think it's medical and schools hand in hand today. I'm sure you're finding this in Brooklyn and in Queens. I never would have guessed that they would be really fervent bidders for not just development sites, but repurposing. And it's not just office. I mean, you know, medical tends to be very sticky tenants, and I think they've evolved now to actual owners. And it becomes much more efficient for them.
You know,
very diverse array of properties as well.
In Queens, a couple of the hospitals leaving really drove that repositioning and
Victory
ancillary-
Memorial
Right.
and some of those others.
What about Flushing?
Flushing is one of the largest Asian communities in the United States, and what sets it apart from other smaller Asian communities is it's not just a tourist destination. It's an amazing place to eat. It has been a bedroom community before it became a work community. So Flushing historically was a place where a lot of Asian immigrants came together and they worked in various different places. You want to talk about a microcosm of the city or a place where there's a very constricted office market, you're getting $58 a foot on the second and third floor in some of the buildings in Flushing.
Yeah,
Good luck getting in
We
there.
just came to market with a commercial condo, like 9,000 feet, and we're getting almost $1,100 a foot. That's
So
Manhattan.
when you kind of look at this dichotomy going on, we're almost reverting back to the 50s, where almost every little economy is local again. Growing up in Brooklyn and Queens, we didn't know much out of our neighborhood. It was the whole economy was within the neighborhood. You had, local services, the retail. There was very much employment locally, and I think
So
we're
now I'm going to go to
back.
two sections in Brooklyn where I want your outspoken opinions. One is Coney Island, which John Catsimatidis believes is great, and I'm not disagreeing. I grew up there, but it's still an hour schlep on the train, okay? And the other one is East New York. Any thoughts on both properties?
I grew up in East New York, well, Ozone Park, which is right next to it, and that was one of the last few bad neighborhoods in New York City. But the warehouse market is fantastic. Retail has been doing really well. I heard the single-family housing market had done pretty well. Every lot got built for affordable type 1 and 2 family homes. The multifamily market, I think, is still pretty challenged. I still think it's a relatively high crime rate.
Okay.
I think East New York still has a lot of social challenges, and I think that really under this administration, they can right the ship with East New York before it invites more multifamily. It's dominated by very low income and Section 8 and things like that. Coney Island is, remains overlooked. Ruby Schroen is doing 750,000 square feet.
Right, but it's not really Coney Island.
That's not Coney Island proper.
It's right near Ocean Parkway, so it's it's more of a
So that's Brighton
It's
and Manhattan
Gravesend.
Beach. So let's go to Coney Island proper, where there are still tracts of land, and go closer to Gargiulo's. I think you're going to see a lot of those auto shops and a lot of those repair shops as you move toward the Belt. I think there's a tremendous amount
So
of
we're going to
business.
see what happened in Brooklyn down on 4th Avenue?
I hope so.
I think as you move towards the Belt is the biggest challenge of Coney Island. It's very hard to get in there. It's almost like a peninsula. The only entry point is Ocean Avenue, McDonald Avenue, and then you've got a couple of miles in.
Cropsey.
If they could ever put an exit off the Belt right into Coney Island, it would be a game changer.
What about near Aqueduct Racetrack, where the Resorts Casino is? Okay, the casino's doing great. Racino's over there. Sports betting is going to be approved in New York. Do you see any development over there for maybe, besides industrial, perhaps?
Well, the Home Depot that does very well, and they did some housing. They did a couple of small neighborhood shopping centers, but I haven't seen anything of substance really get even proposed.
You got low
to a plan.
density zoning.
That's the
The
word.
zoning is very bad.
They'd have to
R,
really
R3 zoning,
We
C1
need the
zoning.
city to take initiative around that. But there's a need for hotels. There's a clear need to redo the racetrack. It's kind of like walking from heaven to hell when you walk the
Right.
transition going into the racetrack. But I think they can build a lot around that because it's really successful.
It's 2 minutes from the airport. I think on a prior show, Michael, you had mentioned with us about maybe doing a convention center or something.
Right.
It's 3 miles from the
I
airport.
don't think that's the draw. I think that's a neighborhood that has had tremendous upward mobility for years, and you have a lot of private homes that were once throwaways that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars now. I think what that neighborhood's lacking, because it has the transportation and it does have pockets of retail, it needs higher density for multifamily.
So in conclusion, it's getting shinier, the apple, right? It's getting brighter, and I think that 2018 will be a good year. The biggest question is how interest rates go up, because it's could have an effect on the sales. And I'd like to thank Brian, Andrew, David, and Tommy, and I'll see you next week.